Hi, and welcome back to the White Noise podcast. We just want to say a happy Pride Month from the two of us, and today you're going to be listening to our Pride Month Minisode.
We wanted to talk today about, to put it in layman's terms, the things that basically made us gay. It's not going to be like a deep philosophical conversation. It's just going to be a bit of fun about the TV shows and stuff we watched growing up, ones that we realised after the fact were like, oh, okay, that one, and then other ones that maybe weren't so obvious to us at the time, but after having a brief discussion before, we realised that they were a big factor in the people we are now.
I like as well, there's a lot of overlap between ours.
There is a huge overlap between ours. And I think when we were briefly comparing our notes before we started this, we were like going, oh my God, yeah, me too.
I mean, this is something we've probably talked about for like the past few years. We've just never like analysed it in any sense. But we also just want to like throw out there before we super dive into this that we are aware that this is going to be very horror heavy. This is by no means a horror episode. It's just pure coincidence that we love horror and horror features some amazing women. So that kind of helped us. I just want to point out that this episode is probably going to be super horror heavy. That does not mean, you know, that this is a horror movie episode. It's just pure coincidence that me and Skye both really love horror films and especially did in our teenage years, which, you know, they're formative for a number of reasons.
I mean, I think anybody who's been listening to us for a while, or maybe just listened to one or two of our episodes before this, you'll realise we're very into horror anyway. It always seems to make its way into an episode. Women always seem to make their way into an episode, and the queer community always seems to make its way into an episode. So this may just be a combination of all three.
I mean, I've seen a lot of your tweets
in some
about
form.
this.
So I don't. Do you want to start with horror today?
I mean, it seems like the natural entryway.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm yeah, like people say the gay agenda is not a thing, but I'm pushing it anyway.
Skye is like the forerunner of the gay agenda.
Yeah, I'm at the front lines.
Well, if I come up with like the first one on my notes, it's The Lost Boys, and I'm sure that's on yours too.
It's not the first one for me, but it is on there, definitely.
I mean, Star, like she just did it for Child Me.
Yeah. I mean, I've just realised maybe we should clarify what our sexualities are because they're not the same. So we will have different perspectives on certain stuff. So I am gay.
And
Lyanna. Yeah, I'm just going to out. Lyanna, please out yourself.
Yes,
I'm sure we mentioned it before on a podcast.
I think we might have done it in the first episode, maybe.
Yeah, or maybe in the unpublished Suspiria episode we might have said it. But I think, again, anyone that's been listening to us for a while and gotten to know us know. So, but yeah, I think because with The Lost Boys, for me, like we talked about it in our third episode when we talked about homoeroticism in the horror genre. I have always seen it as a queer film, and I definitely think it would have 100% had some kind of impact on me, but not enough for me without you saying it for me to think, oh yeah, that would have definitely been a part of it. Because I obviously loved Star, but I think I made a point in the other episode that I did find her a very redundant character other than being the eye candy, because I don't think she was needed in it.
I mean, I love that for me though. Like, it helped me realize who I am. I mean, like for years I was just, I want to be her, and it was only when I was like 17 I was like, wait, hold on a minute.
That is the biggest thing though, isn't it? It's like, do I want to be her or do I want her?
Considering compare as well,
that
like,
was,
you just don't even consider that you're actually just attracted to them. Like that was a massive thing for me. Every time I'd watch media, I'm like, I want to look like this person. Only in recent years where I've been like, hold on a second.
That's I mean, the first on my list is not even the one I thought was going to be first on my list, because mine's Anastasia.
That makes sense.
The animated film, because that was the one that, like, first of all, obviously started my unhealthy love of enemies to lovers, but also I was just watching it like, I don't know who I fancy more. Do I fancy him more? Do I fancy her more? Do I want to be her? Do I want to be him? I don't understand. And then I actually kind of realized, thinking more about it, that was probably just the case with so many like kids films growing up that had that kind of relationship, like any Disney film, which just makes me laugh when people say stuff like, oh, we can't have same-sex couples in animated films because it will confuse the kids. And I'm like, you had straight couples and this kid was still confused.
Exactly.
So it doesn't make a difference.
Like, if anything, having more, like, I know we're going on a tangent here, but if anything, showing more gay couples would probably help some kids be less confused. You know, maybe they'd understand, oh,
Yeah, I
this is
definitely
what
think
I'm
it would.
into, you know? Like, I had the same thing with Anastasia.
Yeah.
Seriously, now you bring it up, it's all coming to my mind. It's making sense. Like, I just remember being obsessed with
I
the hair
guarantee
and that
you
little waist. I just
that
remember
the
it so
hair.
much.
I guarantee you anyone watching that film felt the same way. I want, like, this is the beginning of the episode, but I want anybody right now to go to our social media posts or our YouTube comments and just say whether or not you felt the same, because I'm pretty sure so many people did.
And
It's
you
Anastasia
can't
is
even
the
blame,
queer
like,
film no one even knew existed.
exactly, like the Meg Ryan voice acting as well. Like, come on.
Yes.
Meg Ryan actually, I think, might have
Yeah.
been a big one for me, like later in life, because I didn't actually discover like When Harry Met Sally and such until I was older. And I remember watching it because like I've always known I was bi, but I think I was like, it took me a while to be like, yes, I am, like with a capital B. You know what I mean? Not just like, oh, I'm a teenager who might
Yeah.
be. It's like I actually am. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think genuinely a huge one of for that for me was When Harry Met Sally, because I remember watching it and being like, I should not be attracted to Billy Crystal, and I was like, I'm not, and I was like telling myself, I was like, I'm into his personality, but at the same time I also want to be him because Sally's a sweetheart. And it was all very
Mm-hmm.
confusing, very, very confusing. I'm actually happy that I didn't see that one as a teenager, because I think that would have just sent me into an absolute spiral.
Just made it so much worse. That's so
Yeah.
crazy. Now you bring up Harry Met Sally, like, just any film, I guess, especially any romance film, just really confused me as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, another one for me that I have shown my love for many times in my real life and on this podcast is Moulin Rouge. It was another clear example of, do I fancy him? Do I fancy her? What do I want from this situation? And I don't know, even now knowing that I am gay, I sometimes still feel like that when I watch it. I just get those flashes.
I think sometimes it's the fact that men can be portrayed as slightly more in touch with their emotions, more effeminate, and that sometimes the rare occasions
I
for like
think
queer
so.
women to actually find men attractive. I don't know about you, but I found quite often that like when like gay male filmmakers portray men, I'm more into them because they're portrayed in a completely different way to the way that a heterosexual man portrays men. There's a different lens on it. I've always
That's
found that
true.
very
That's actually a
interesting.
really good point.
Mhm. Well, like
Yeah.
we talk about the Lost
I mean, I
Boys.
think with
I
Moulin
am
Rouge, like,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Oh
You
no, I
go.
was just gonna say, I think with Moulin Rouge as well, it's also just super, super camp.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
what I mean.
super
Yeah.
camp, so there's no denying that it
Portrayed
had,
for a
yeah.
totally different lens.
But
Yeah.
yeah, you're completely right.
Mm-hmm. As I say,
Yeah.
like the Lost Boys, Joel Schumacher, the director, gay as all hell, and he's like literally made like my perfect man and woman in that film. You know, like all those dangly earrings and the layers and stuff. Like I love it. Like I want to be in that
Oh, it was
sandwich.
also just the era as well, though.
Mm.
The era was so queer.
Just 80s. Like
I
I'm
think I
telling you,
saw
if you
a
watch
tweet
Dirty Dan-
today that was something like,
Sorry, we keep talking over each other. We're too excited about this stuff, but you go.
yeah, I know. No, I was just gonna say I saw this tweet today that was like, every 80s horror film is like just getting a bunch of teens and dropping them in a situation, and then in my head I was like, yeah, and then just sprinkling a bit of like ambiguity over the top of it as well.
I mean, like
It's just the recipe
like
for an 80s film.
Nightmare on Elm Street 2, classic. I feel like a lot of the films we're going to talk about are very 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like you say, it was an era of sexual ambiguity, so perfect.
80s and 90s, yeah, for me.
Definitely. Now for 80s one, Dirty Dancing. When I watched that again last year, I was sat there like, fuck me, what to do with myself. It's a weird example because I'm very open with this on social media and with Skye and people in my personal life. I just think women are amazing, really. Like I'm bisexual, but I would call myself leaning towards women. And like nothing wrong with it. It's a complete valid thing, you know? And I think Dirty Dancing might be like the only thing which makes me go the other way. Where Patrick Swayze just has this hold on me. I'm telling you. Like he's like magical. I was watching it and I was just like, don't get me wrong, Jennifer Grey's an angel, but like Patrick Swayze, man. I don't that film is a treat for bisexuals.
Lyanna's just mesmerized by those hips.
I literally am. Like he can sing, he can dance, he can act. He's a triple
amazing.
threat.
Brilliant. I love that. I mean, another classic 80s one is obviously the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but I'm not like 100% sure if I was already quite solidified in my gayness, I guess is the best way to put it, by that point. And that's why I loved it so much. I think with that, it was more to do with the overt expression of sexuality in it. And it kind of made me go, oh, these things exist in a funny way. So it wasn't like just sex for the sake of sex or anything like that. Like, it was funny, it was camp, it was like, oh my god, there's a really funny side to all these things.
They can revel in it and make it fun and exciting and daring, and just everything about Rocky Horror makes like not being entirely heterosexual seem fun. You know, like that sequence where Frankenfurter goes from like Brad and Janet's rooms to each other. It's just like, oh, interesting. But then you also have to acknowledge, I guess, like the demonization of like bisexuals. But like, I never viewed it in that way. I was like, how cool is that? Like, I was the complete opposite. I don't know about you.
But yeah, it's just the whole thing, overtly camp, overtly sexual. And I think it's like when I started to realize that things didn't have, like, not that I was ever in a position where like I felt like I had to keep things a secret, but I think I was the same as a lot of people, that like I didn't want to come out and say something and put a label on myself, which no one should have to do. But I think especially when we were growing up, a lot of people felt the pressure to do it for themselves more than anything, because like I was like, okay, if I can understand myself, then it'll make things a lot easier. That was not true, but that was like a later down the line story. But like, yeah, seeing stuff like that was kind of like, oh, okay, so it can just be fun. It doesn't have to be this thing. You can go back and forth. You can change your mind. You know, it can be crazy. It can be confusing. It's all a part of it. It's all a part of growing up, not just discovering your sexuality. But like, I think I had a conversation with someone the other day about how people always talk about going on like a journey to discover your sexuality, and, you know, being straight being the norm, but it's like people just go through puberty. That's what happens, and then you come out of the end of it being at whatever you are, and the end of it isn't 18. The end of it isn't 25, it's not 30. It goes on for a long time. So like this whole going back and forth thing, it just keeps going. And it's okay if it does. It doesn't have to land on any one thing.
I think that's what's great about, like you say, Rocky Horror, is like the fluidity of it. You know, I think that's why younger people, like teenagers and people going through puberty, like they are drawn to that film in particular. You know, it had like huge appeal to young audiences and like the cult circuit, didn't it? And the midnight movie circuit, because like they didn't get that representation anywhere. It was like you were gay or you weren't. There was nothing else, you know? I think like that movie is definitely notable for that. There's a lot of stuff in here which is like either good or bad, but if you're going to go away and watch anything, I would highly recommend Rocky Horror from the ones we're listing today.
Yeah,
big time.
Yeah, because it's just fun. It'll take you, if you haven't seen it, it'll take you a few times to even understand what's going on. Maybe you won't, but you don't have to.
It's just
and it's a musical. Everybody loves musicals.
Exactly. I feel
it
like
really is.
Like, I think we said this either in a previous episode or in a personal conversation, and we said that like musicals themselves are just very camp.
Yeah, we did. Why did we? I think it's because we were talking about Glee.
Maybe.
And I think you brought up a really good point of how the reason people reacted so much to Glee, despite how extremely problematic it was and still is the fact that, like you said, it was done in such a brilliant way that it felt like an actual musical. And I think that's why people resonated with it so much, because yeah, musicals do seem to have, I know it sounds stereotypical, but musicals do seem to have quite a hold on the queer community. They definitely have a hold on me, without a doubt.
I mean, like, just see the amount of tweets of people, and TikToks especially, of people saying that like Christine Baranski in Mamma Mia helped them realize they were gay. Like, there's definitely something about Mamma Mia.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my god, yeah. I mean, everything about Mamma Mia. The fact that the songs are from ABBA, like some of the things we're bringing up and we're saying it, I'm like, well, duh, of course it was gay. But then I'm thinking, well, when I was watching it, I didn't think that. So I'm sure there are some people still not quite clued in yet. But it's just so funny talking about musicals, because like another big thing that shaped my life in general, but especially my sexuality, was Buffy. Like. I have made no secret of my love of vampires. Buffy was a huge thing for me, like from the portrayal of actual queer characters to the queer coded characters. But you bringing up musicals just makes me think of the episode Once More with Feeling, which is like such an iconic episode. And the fact, yeah, even a queer coded show like that put a musical number in. It just really goes with the formula of musicals, gay.
I mean, like, there's just something about it. The fact that it's like so joyous and like you can just mess with structure and such, and it's like performative. Everything about it just seems to like, I don't want to lean into stereotypes here, but at the same time, I'm struggling not to.
No, I don't think it's. I mean, going away from this a bit, like just bringing up, say, Buffy as a show, for example, without the musical element of it. You had these characters that were, again, like strong female roles. For me especially, and I'm sure for Lyanna was the same, also very much drew me in because it showed women in these positions that were very attractive, because they weren't just these creatures in the corner or these things for these men. They were like their own people. They had their own heartbreak and their own fights and their own battles. Faye existed. Like I love Buffy, like don't get me wrong, but Faye also existed. Faith, I'm getting her name wrong, that's terrible. Faith existed. And then obviously you had the obvious relationship between Willow and Tara, that was so interesting to me even as a kid, because like there's one really specific scene where I remember, I think even watching it, because I was so young when I first watched it, I didn't even fully grasp that they were a couple. Like my brain, even though they were making it explicit, my brain couldn't quite get there. And then there was this one scene where like there was a scene happening and then it just cut to them in a bed together, just having a regular conversation. And it was like obvious what had happened beforehand, but they didn't make a thing of it. It was just a couple having a normal conversation about whatever peril was facing the Scooby Gang that month. And it was just very humbling to see. And I think maybe since then, as time's gone on, it's made me want to see, like, as much as I love, and I do love in your face kind of camp stuff like that, I do also want to see the more subtle side of things, of just people being people. And so that was nice to see in that as a kid.
Just some nice quiet moments, It's like, you haven't watched It's Always Sunny, have you? No, but there was always this running gag that one of the main characters was gay, and it was used for laughs. But as the show progressed, the writers and the cast, the creators were just like, you know what, no, like let's pay respect to this. And they just did like these amazing episodes of him like coming out in like season 13. And it was like genuinely heartfelt and really touching, and like the whole team were like at Pride that year and stuff like that, and like they really showed their support, and like the queer community like rallied behind that show. And I hadn't realized how like the queer community really enjoyed that show before that. And sometimes you just can't explain what it is about something that brings in a queer
it just has
audience.
this,
There's just something intangible,
It just has this magnetism.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the queer community knows before the show even does.
Yeah, no, I agree. The amount of things where like creators probably haven't even realized that it's been like taken in by queer audiences. For example, the second Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Like they kind of knew it was gay, but they didn't realize it had developed like a cult following, did they? Until like decades later, which is crazy.
Which is insane.
Yeah, that's mad.
But then it's because we do exist in a world where like we can be a lot more open about it. So like to us seeing it now, it's like, I don't think it's because nobody knew. I just think it's because nobody wanted to talk about it.
Well, I mean, like, look at now where just any old film will come out and you get people making a fan cam. You'll get people making fan cams of like the middle-aged lead actress and posting them all over Twitter. Like people can just be unabashedly queer now on online spaces. Not saying it doesn't come without like dangers and faults and stuff, but like online spaces have meant people can queer everything. Absolutely everything. Anything you want, you can like read it with a gay lens at this point. It's like, as much as we're talking about stuff that made us realize we're gay, I think a lot of people will take something which has like no gay tones in it at all, but it would have helped them realize.
See, it's really interesting you bring that up, because I was only thinking the other day, one of my biggest pet peeves at the moment that we're seeing a lot of, that like it is in support of the queer community, but it's one of those examples that I just feel like people aren't quite getting the kind of support the community needs. So you're having characters in like already established shows and movies come out as queer or bisexual or gender fluid or anything like that without having any established story beforehand. It's just, they've just said it now. It's a thing you'll always know, but they'll never portray it in any certain way. And I think bisexuality is one of the biggest ones of them, because they'll say that a character is bisexual, and then I don't need to see the character in a same-sex relationship. But it's like, especially in stuff like sitcoms, and things where the characters are sitting around and they're having conversations and they comment on someone that walks in the room. Like, give me that kind of banter that you would have with an actual person, instead of just being like, oh, this person, you know, this person's now bisexual, but you'll never get any kind of backstory to that or any kind of connection.
Uga was so guilty of, you know, dropped that Cece kissed a girl, but then they went on to deconstruct Megan Fox's character, because at first like, she's bisexual, she's cool, and then they kind of like went into the fact that like she doesn't have these casual flings, like she's like emotionally unavailable and all these things, and like that was like a really great example. And it made me realize how little that does happen in sitcoms, you know, that there's always like that like bisexual character. Brilliant example, Sex and the City, that infamous episode where she's like, oh, I didn't want to date him, he's bisexual, and Samantha is deemed as like a sexual deviant because she's like, who cares, and the others are all like, what's wrong with you, it's just crazy how outdated that's become. But like that was the norm for so long, and probably still is to a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I don't want to take, like, bringing this topic up, I don't want to take away from anybody who, like, that's happened to one of their, like, say their favorite characters, who is now been given a queer backstory, and it's like really helped them and really made them feel good. Like, I'm not here to tell anybody how something can affect them. So it's good if that has helped people. It's just, for me, I think it's a big excuse to not just actually create queer characters from the get-go. Like, the biggest thing at the moment is like every single freaking headline is Disney's first gay character, Disney's first gay character, and it's like, are you actually being serious?
Well, there's all the jokes now, like, oh my god, Disney has just revealed its fourth first gay character.
And it's always, as well, like, it's like everybody goes into the movie waiting for it, and we should all know better by now, but then it's like a 2-second background scene. It's like, are you being serious?
It's horrible.
Really? You're actually going to market your movie like that?
Just like the weakest queer baiting I've ever seen. Which is interesting, because a lot of people read into Disney very gay anyway, you know, like I can't even begin to think of the amount of people who must have like been like, Meg, when watching Hercules.
Yeah, oh 100%, yeah. But then again, I think that's also because of Hercules' character, like us talking about, I mean, I don't know actually who worked on that film, so I don't know if any women were actually involved. But his kind of character is the kind of character that women relate to, and because Disney always has to have these opposing roles, Meg then instead took on the fierce role that you would expect to see from the hero. So, but yeah, you're totally right. I think no matter how much, you know, Disney in particular, but any kind of corporation tries to get away from it. I mean, as much as I love Pride Month, I'm sure everyone can agree one of the most annoying things is seeing every single logo and sign become a rainbow. And it's like, I made a comment today that like so many corporations are gay for the pay and not the stay. And it's just like, it's nice, because obviously it is nice to see representation, and it's nice to see an alliance. But it is, because it's like, if someone just decided like, oh, actually, we're going to move Pride Month a month ahead, it won't make a difference.
No. It's just like, it's so shallow and it doesn't make any change. Like the actual change comes not from these big corporations. They're just in it for the money. The actual change comes from people, you know, like discussing online and having these stupid conversations about which character make them realize they're gay and stuff like that. Like, and this isn't to say you should put it on characters, because, or like real life people. That's always been weird to me, because just out there, if you were one of those weird people writing like fanfic about like Sherlock and Loki, fine for you. But if you were pressing it on the actors, that's when it gets too far, and that happens like, way too often now on Twitter and Tumblr and such.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of people, despite their sexualities, are very comfortable to be this reputation from somebody. But I think some people have to realize that if the situations were reversed, and if we were then looking at a queer actor who was being told that oh no, you're definitely straight. You're straight, of course you're straight. You can understand why they'd be uncomfortable. So I agree. I think keeping it in the kind of, I say, fantasy world is the best way I can think to describe it. Like anything that helps you. Like Lyanna said, you take the characters 100%, but I think when it starts going into actual people's lives it's a bit different.
Yeah, you can definitely queer characters, just not people. Like, I'm pretty sure I've seen like actors and such before say like, just let my character be gay. There was someone a few months ago, they kept saying it, and people were like, you do know you can kiss girls in real life, right? I can't remember who it was.
Oh, was it Margot Robbie that because
Yes.
she kept pushing for like the Harley Quinn and
Yes,
Poison
that was it.
Ivy, obviously the storyline, which I am all here for. I would love to see that. But yeah, I saw the tweet where someone was like, does anyone want to tell us she can just kiss girls in real life? It's amazing.
So funny. I don't know. I think there's something about giving power to like gay characters on screen rather than just in comics and such is so powerful, because like it's one thing to have it in books and comics and everything, but to like actually have people like portray it on screen, like that someone actually wanted to put the money and the time into it. Not that that doesn't happen with, you know, like comics and novels, but like to put that on such a big visual medium, you know, that's going to reach a wider audience, it feels like there's a lot of impact to that. Like I always think of, and this is such a silly one, I always think of Marceline and Princess Bubblegum when I think of like lesbian representation, because that was so impactful for so many people, and people acted like it's just a kid's show. It's like, fuck no. I think that meant a lot to a lot of people.
Oh, it definitely does, because I've never even actually watched the show, and even I knew about it.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's really funny you talking about like how it's really good to see it on like a bigger platform, but like it obviously is still existing on smaller platforms. And I've just realized that one of the biggest contributions to mine was actually a video game I used to play as a kid. And it's this game called Primal that I don't know if anybody's even played it. If I've ever brought it up to people, they've never known what it is. But it was with this main character called Jen. It's very 90s. Very, very 90s. Like she spent the whole game in like a crop top and combat trousers. And then she was given like these claw weapons that transformed her into like different beings. It was a great game. But like that was just so iconic for me, because she was this like badass feminine character, just like doing her thing. Yeah,
I was just gonna say, I think like seeing feminine women be strong was always a big one for me, because it felt a lot of the time like watching women I was like super fascinated by, like they aligned with masculine traits. So to see like women that were still portrayed as femme like be fascinating, I was like, hold on a second, like then that started to like kind of do like some switching up in my brain, like altering the brain chemistry. And like let me think of an example, like obviously Jennifer's body, you know, like she's very feminine, and like we will talk about that very soon, won't we, Skye? But yeah, stuff like Legally Blonde, stupid shit, like not stuff where I was necessarily like, oh my god, I'm gay watching it, but like things that made me realize that I could like be obsessed with female characters in the way I was with male characters. Like they were put on this pedestal without being made more masculine. I feel like I'm talking in circles here, but I think you can get
no,
what I'm getting at.
I understand it, because it's a lot of it was about breaking stereotypes, because you know, we were talking earlier about like how we didn't want to stereotype it too much, that like musicals and the queer community are so close together, because I know a lot of people within the queer community who detest musicals, you know, just because we like them doesn't mean that anyone else does. But yeah, there's also the stereotypes on the other side, that like, you know, you're born, say in her example, as girls, we identify as women, and we grow up thinking that we're gonna meet a guy, we're gonna get married, we're gonna have kids, and then you see these things on TV of these women who also are doing that. Not that they're queer women or even necessarily queer coded, but they are living a life outside of this expected norm. And I think that's when, especially younger, you start realizing it's like, oh, there is another way to do things. It doesn't have to be this way. So I understand what you're saying. I think it is very important, even those kinds of roles, you know, that do just break those kind of stereotypes.
Just female leads. Like I recently read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and that was massive for me. Like having like so many characters be queer but still like be like really successful, and not be portrayed as like, oh, tragic endings and stuff like that. Like that was very impactful for me, you know, like just people being powerful despite like being made to, you know, despite being marginalized in like their era and like even today. I found that there was a lot of power for me in The Handmaiden, because they weren't marginalized for being gay, they were marginalized for being women, because like you said this in previous episodes, back then like people didn't even believe women could be gay or that they would be gay. And so like something about The Handmaiden for me where like there wasn't this shocking moment for them, they just like they were attracted to each other and they didn't even overthink it. It was just like that was a fact, like they just rolled with it. Like that for me was a big deal as well, you know. I found that yeah, if I'm going to sum up my points in this episode, it's just finding like strong female leads and queerness being portrayed as just like an aspect of life rather than like this, you know, separate entity of someone. That for me has always been a big deal, more than any other thing.
I can't lie, I'm going to have to completely agree with those points. I think that's kind of just the summary of this episode. Like, we knew it wasn't going to be very long because a lot of the stuff we've said we have like mentioned in previous episodes. So like if you wanted to hear more about them, especially the films we've spoken about, definitely go back and listen through them. But I think it was more just a point of realizing the things that we saw when we were younger and what maybe we'd like to see a bit more of now, like feeding into that whole, like you said, queerness not being the be all and end all, just being a part of it. You know, it just thrown in. Like I remember reading this book that I don't know if you've read it, Lyanna, but I've seen quite a few people mention it recently, called Ash.
No.
I'm sure that's what it was called. It was basically a retelling of Cinderella, but queer.
Okay.
But I don't think it was even marketed that way because I got it in like a book bundle. So I don't remember I even actually knew anything about it before I read it. But I remember exactly, I was 13. It's when we went on our holiday to America because it was in the car ride to Vegas. I read the whole thing. And then just all of a sudden, after all the events that happen, the Cinderella character, who I'm sure was called Ash, that's probably why the book was called Ash, ends up with this huntress who she'd known throughout. And like I don't fully remember it properly, so like if it isn't actually a very well done book or a very good portrayal of like the queer community, I do apologize if anyone can correct me, but I think I just remember reading it at that age and it kind of came out of nowhere. There wasn't any of this prelude to it. It was just she chose her over her other options and then they literally ran away into the sunset together.
Yeah, see, I think that's what we need more of, like you mentioned earlier with Buffy and such. Yeah, some more of just like, you know,
just needs to be in it. I mean, life. Yeah, Buffy unfortunately is still not the best example because also spoiler, but I feel like everybody knows by now what happened to Tara and Willow's relationship. It was the very stereotypical end. That is like my only hate with it. I know it was a thing of the time, but yeah, I think I'm just tired of seeing those kind of sad endings. As much as I love a tragic ending, like I can't help it, I do, especially a tragic romance ending. You need to see a bit more of success because I just don't think people realize how growing up and like you are literally a sponge when you're young and you're taking that in subconsciously and you do just associate it with being not even this bad thing, but this kind of, it's like you're going to have a sad life, you're probably going to be lonely, it's going to be hard to meet people. That's just relationships. That isn't specific to the queer community, but they try and make it seem like it is.
Yeah, exactly. Like basically, I know this is like not a shocking thing to say, but just need more, not even positive portrayals, just less extremely negative and depressing ones. And I think that's the final note I'm going to leave this episode on, because this could almost be a full episode if we keep going.
Yeah, it could. Yeah. Well, I don't think we've said anything today that, like Lyanna said, nobody already knew and was thinking about, but we just wanted to lend our voices in this minisode, and maybe in the main episode this month, if you stick around, as our little celebration of Pride Month. You know, we want to keep the conversations going whilst it's topical for people. Like I want to keep them going all year round, but you know, yeah, whilst the rest of the world cares.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, yeah, check out our social media. We want to constantly hear your suggestions on what episodes we should do. So we're trying to plan the next few months of content. So if you have any suggestions for films or shows or anything that you want us to cover, just let us know on Twitter or YouTube or anywhere, really.
Mm-hmm. Also get very excited because these next few months, for what we've got planned, I think it's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be good. It's going to be a bit different. Look forward to that.
And with that, I'm going to do the classic fade out.
Yeah, brilliant.